here we go. I made the decision to do the underside of Trixie's dog jacket with ribbing. We already know how to hand form ribbing. I can show you later how to do other sorts of hems, such as a hung hem. Also, other sorts of not really ribbing, such as mock rib. But let's go on and get this done. I'm entirely following the instructions from Alex, who has the Sweater Factory channel on YouTube. I know Alex. He's utterly reliable with his information and a pleasure to listen to as well. Somebody else who is a very good resource is Charlie from the Vintage Knitting Machine Company. Also a fine fellow. And interestingly, Charlie lives on a narrowboat. So there, you got a little bit of the tea. We've attached the ribber. And this is a Knittax machine, and the Knittax has, like the Knit King, has a circular opening on the body of the main bed, and a post on the ribber goes into it. Some of the Knitmaster and Ribmaster machines from the UK have the ribber has parts that slide under the main carriage. And the early Knitmasters weren't sold. There was no Ribmaster. And so they weren't sold for an attachment for a ribber because there wasn't a ribber. And so ask me how I know. You can buy a machine by accident that does not allow for a ribber. I'm sure it could be fixed so that you could attach a ribber. And I will get my machine out that does not take a ribber, and we'll go through that sometime as an interesting rigging it lesson. But for now, let's cast on. So the ribber is on. We're going to make sure that all of the ribber latches are down. I need to cast on 36 or 37 stitches. So the way I'm going to do that to begin with is I'm going to bring out 15 needles, or bring out the needles at 15 on each side. Let me get this up and over for a while. Okay. And then I'm going to bring up got carried away, the ribber needles into working position, which is roughly here. And at that point, I'm going to bring out the correct in between main bed needles, and that's these, and then return these marker ones to working position. So now I have ribber needles in working position, main bed needles in working position. With these machines, as Alex points out, when you're ribbing, the first and last needle of the ribbing has to be on the main bed. In other words, you can't have a ribber needle be last, and that works well for your seams anyway. Okay. I'm going to move, you see where my carriages are. It doesn't matter where you start. What matters is where you end. I'm going to bring the main bed carriage across. Then I want it to end on the left, and so I brought it back. Now, my ribber carriage is already on the left, but I want it to end on the right. And so I'm just going to bring it across once. And all needles are in position, and the carriages are where they need to go. Tension, that's your stitch size, is 1 to start with on the main carriage, and it's wherever we're headed, which in this case is 6 on the ribber carriage. We're going to come up in increments as we knit the cast on with the main bed, but this does not. Once we start with the ribber, we're knitting, and so it can just be where it's going to be. The tail end of the yarn needs to be secured to the left eyelet, and that's that. Okay, just holds it still, and we're going to put the yarn across the needles of the main bed, and we're going to take the main carriage left to right. at this point, without loosening tension, okay, I'm going to secure this to the right eyelet. Do not let it sag here or sag here. Otherwise, you're going to have, it's actually the original meaning of the word sleazy was loose cloth. And you're going to have loose stitches or sleazy stitches, and you'll have problems. It will start dropping and failing to make, and the whole, everything that stitches do when they're having problems. So we've secured on both sides. At this stage, we have the stitches are behind the latches of the main bed and just coming across the throat of the ribber needles. See that? They haven't done anything. And they're not going to do anything for a while. They're just going to hold that bar that came across them. So I'm bringing each of them down so that the eye, that's not even supposed to be up, so that the eye, or the hook, not the eye, the hook of each of the ribber needles is holding its bar of yarn. Making sure I've got everything here. Hang on. I want to release the working end, but not let it get too loose, okay? Putting the yarn under the tooth of that first sinker. You need to see this. Let me get here. Putting the yarn under the tooth of that first sinker. Remember how we do that? We're going to put the yarn across the main carriage needles. We're about to do what you think of as knitting on the main carriage, on the main bed, but we're going to first switch the tension up to 3. So that's now at 3. I'm going to knit 2 rows on the main carriage only. The ribber is doing nothing right now. So there's one. And then going under the tooth of that sinker, we're going to come back. And there's what we have. Two stitches, let's let it focus. 2 stitches on the main bed, and the ribber needles are still holding their bar in the hook. Both, at this point, and this is important, both the main carriage and the ribber carriage are on the right-hand side. Go back. Gather my thoughts. Okay, I had just I'm looking at this, and you can see where I was too lazy when I scratched something out to rewrite it, and so I wrote this long arrow, and I keep overlooking that arrow. So we are where we need to be. What we're going to do is prepare the ribber needles for knitting. In order to knit, they have to come up and then come down so that the latch is atop the bar that was being held. I'm going to set the tension of the main carriage to 6 so that they match. Often they don't match, but Alex recommends that they match, and I've followed his instructions many a time, and it makes just a lovely cloth. So tensions match, Latches are atop the bar, and we're going to release the left tail. I don't like to have it hanging anywhere near where I'm working. And so I drop the tail between the beds, like so. And I hang a little something on it. I have two things here. I think I'm just going to use this, which is my cheap clip. But I wanted to point this out, and I'm worried I'll forget. These are much heavier, maybe a little too heavy. But when you need a clip weight, this kind of thing is nice. What they're for is for picnic table tablecloths. If you're eating outside and you have a tablecloth, these are weights that hang around the edge of the tablecloth, and they're awfully handy for various applications of knitting, so I keep them around. However, I don't want to have that heavy a weight on it, so I just want them out of the way, and that will do. The next 3 steps are the knitting steps. Nothing's going to change. We're going to repeat these 3 steps over and over. So at this point, what is actually going to knit is the ribber, and then the main carriage is going to follow. So the ribber, then the main carriage, then the ribber and the main carriage, and so on and so forth until you're done. Okay, I'm going to zero this out, and I don't remember how many I need, but I can look that up once I've gotten through this. Okay, and here is the sequence. I want you to be able to see. Trying to make sure that, just in case you have questions about your setup, that you can see what this one is. And here we go. I'm going to reach over the phone, secure the tail, bring the yarn, and it's got to be able to be caught, by the ribber needle hooks. So when you're holding the yarn rather than down, which is going to leave these hooks out of commission, you hold it back a bit. You see there? And that's something you want to watch. Once you get knitting and everything's kind of working correctly, and you hold your hand correctly each time, you don't have to be as careful checking, but right now, be careful. And you come across for the first time in a while with the ribber carriage, and it has knitted, and the latches are on top of the stitches. Then you just follow with the main bed. Then under the tooth, under the hooks, okay? Because the ribber is what's going to knit. And if you think of it that way, you'll remember to get that yarn. See how my hand? You'll remember to get that yarn where it needs to be. Back up a little bit. And then here comes the caboose. It's really fun. You can see how it's just pushing that beautiful, beautiful ribbing down. And I will knit for a while, then come back when we need to figure out what to do to bind or cast off.